Hello class, and welcome back to our part 2 of our adventures in dissection. We're still here with the pig heart, and this one we're going to explore a little bit more the internal structures and how to get to them. So just a quick note of one thing that I did neglect to mention in my first video on the external structures that was most likely caught in your lab manual or instructions for this dissection is the base and the apex. Most of the time when we think of the base of something, we think of it as the bottom. But when we look at the heart, actually the base is up at the top of the heart where all of the major vessels come into and out of. The apex is the point down at the bottom. So, just a side note there. Now, as we look at the internal structures, it's important to note, first of all, of basically how to get there, how to get to them. So, what is it we can do to get in there? Now, what you'll find is that the muscular layers of the pig heart are actually quite thick, especially on the left side. So, it does take a little bit of cutting to get into them. So, and I've seen multiple dissection labs or sets of instructions that show a couple of ways to do it. So I'm going to highlight two of them that have worked for me and my students in the past, and you can choose which one will work best for you. So, the first method is to make an incision down the side. And with this one, I've actually started in the left atrium and headed down through the left ventricle. And what you can do here is now you can open it up and see all the internal structures of both the ventricle and their atrium. Now, with this one, I got lucky enough to, or shall I say skilled enough, to actually get through the atrium and into the ventricle without completely cutting the mitral or bicuspid valve. So we'll explore that a little bit more later though. All right, then we can come over, and on the right side it was easy to cut a little bit more on the front. So coming from this one, I came from the pulmonary trunk down through, so that way I can see the pulmonary valve, I can see the right ventricle, and I can see the tricuspid valve as well. I did not, in this particular specimen, cut into the right atrium, but you can get and see into that fairly easily when you find the superior and inferior vena cavas. Okay, so that is method number one. The second method is what we could call the puzzle method. And this one we've actually taken and cut large pieces out of the wall of the left ventricle. All right, this one we started with a small piece and then extended it up a little bit. Now, the benefit of this is you can actually see the thickness of the left ventricle. And as you can tell, there's actually quite a bit of meat to that wall. Okay, it's quite hardy. As we know, it does take a lot of force in order to get blood all the way to the entire body, and in humans we actually have to fight gravity a little bit more than pigs do. So we cut that out. That gives you full exposure to the left ventricle. We can cut out a section here off of the front of the right ventricle and give us exposure there. Now, you'll see here that the right ventricle wall is actually much thinner. So in comparison, there's a significant difference. So if you remember this, the right ventricle is taking blood just to the lungs, which is literally next door. So it is not require the same amount of force as is required in the left ventricle. Now, in addition to that, I have cut a part of the left atrium away so that we can see into that. Now, as you'll notice, there are actually quite a few ridges, and what these are known as musculi pectinati.
All right, so musculi meaning muscular. Pectinati actually comes from pectin, which refers to the teeth of a comb. So you notice that they're actually a little bit smaller. When you're looking into the ventricles, these actually get much thicker. And what we have here, these are known as the trabeculae carnae. All right, so trabeculae means a group or partition of bands. And what we see here, they do look like bands of muscle. Carnae actually refers to meat or meaty, and because they are muscular, there is, you know, a meatiness to them. Okay, so now that we have that set aside and have identified how to get in there, let's take a look at what actually we can see once we're there. Okay, so I have a lovely assistant here. Luke is going to help me out hold things open. So what we'll see here is that this is the right ventricle. The blood is coming in from the right atrium. It's going to come through this valve right here. Okay, in addition to the walls of the ventricle, what we'll see is that there are small muscles that attach these valves to the wall. All right, this is going to hold everything in place and help to control those valves. Attached to the valves, you can see one here, get underneath it, one here, and one here. Okay, these are chordae tendineae. All right, so their cords are kind of like tendons, and they're actually quite thick. If you pull on them, they're really hard. I mean, I can rip that out if I want, but you'll notice that they actually are really quite sturdy. Now, if I did rip it out, I would actually rip it from the wall of the heart and not actually tear the tendineae itself. So you'll see this is the tricuspid valve. We have one flap of this valve here. The second valve, actually, if we can turn this just a little bit, hold that, you'll see that it is actually laying against the wall right here. And the third one is laying against the back wall. It's a little harder to see in this particular specimen, but there are three flaps to this particular valve. So as you're looking at it, see if you can find all three flaps. Once that happens, it's going to go up into, it'll go further back in, and it'll go, oh, sorry, no, actually a little more forward. It'll go up through the pulmonary valve. And again, I got lucky and did not cut completely through the pulmonary valve. So that one actually is a semilunar valve, and it only has two flaps. So there's one here toward the front and another one toward the back, which can't see as well because the front one's in the way. So there it is. Both are going to go up through the pulmonary trunk right here and out the pulmonary arteries to the lungs. Now, if we go over to the left side, this one we can see as we come in the pulmonary veins back to the heart. You can see the musculi pectinati in there somewhat, and you'll see the valve, the mitral valve. Go ahead and hold there. The mitral valve right here. And I did make small cut through it, but your main valve is right through here. You can see the chordae tendineae. You can see the papillary muscle where it attaches, and after it comes through here, once the ventricle contracts, those will close to keep it from going backwards, and then it'll go back out through the aorta. So the aorta, actually, the valve is deep down in there. It's hard to find. So what I did with this particular specimen is I went to the back and I actually cut the aorta, or dissected the aorta. You'll see the thickness of the wall right here. But as I cut, you follow it deep, and it goes deep down into to get into that left ventricle. So if the lighting were a little better, you would be able to see the aortic valve in there. Go ahead and hold there for me. See if I can get a little bit of a view. I'm not sure if it's gonna show well in the video, but it is right down just past the opening. There is another semilunar valve that is the aortic valve that is going to go up and serve the rest of the body. If we were to look at the aorta a little bit more, we may be able to find, yes, there are from the inside your two arteries that are serving the upper body. So again, as noted before, best way to find things is to stick a probe through them to see where they are going. So there's one of your, that is the left subclavian, and the other one, a little bit further down, if I can get through all of that, there is your brachiocephalic. Okay, so another quick review of structures that you should find. We'll start with the valves. You have your, on the right side, you have your tricuspid valve, and you have your pulmonary valve. On the left side, you have your mitral valve, and further up in is your aortic valve. Other structures you see internally, once again, were the trabeculae carnae and the musculi pectinati on the other specimen. Beyond that, you can continue to look at your vessels from the inside and see where they go. So, hope this helps and prepares you for actual dissection when we do make it to class.